Triceratops is just so abundant, it's kind of annoying because you want to find something besides
That's the answer I was
Triceratops.
getting. That's what I was getting at right there.
Yeah, you find some bone chunk and you pick it up and you see the blood grooves and stuff in it, and it's frill, and you're like, another Triceratops.
Welcome back to the show, Mike. Been about a year, maybe
I think it was
10
April.
months.
April, I think it was.
When I started getting all powering through, getting a bunch of guests, and you happened to land in my cold call net. Put you in my little cold call basket, and here you are.
There I am.
You've had a lot of change since you've been on here.
Yeah, I moved cross country from Illinois to Wyoming, so I am now a Wyomingite, as I think they call them now, and actually enjoying the weather. It's like 60. Well, it was like 60 some degrees, which for out here on March 10th is ridiculous.
And did anybody get bit by a rattlesnake or die of dysentery on the way?
No. My wife, she moved out. She was already out here, and then I moved the truck, and then like a couple days later, my parents helped me move the kids. So I think that was an adventure in and of themselves, moving the kids cross country.
I bet that's sounds like a lifetime's worth of stress in just a couple of weeks.
It was, and it was a hectic summer, and man, I mean, we bought the house actually a year ago today, and we that summer I was in Newcastle, and we got a hailstorm. It was like pea-sized hail. It wasn't a big deal, and then my wife calls me a bit later, and she's like, "Oh, we got a lot of hail," and I was like, "Yeah, we did too." She's like, "You don't understand. We got hail," and I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And she sends me pictures, and they're like the size of baseballs.
You said it got rough out there. The hailstorm did.
Yeah, it took out the roof, took out a couple windows, made her car look like a golf ball.
Yeah.
So
like the Epcot Center.
Yeah, basically that's what it looked like. And so, it was an adventure, but now I'm here, so finally made it cross country.
How was the summer out there? The last summer's dig.
Summer was kind of stressful. We had a number of personal incidents that happened, including our now passed, unfortunately, fearless leader had a car accident and totaled his truck and had to come home. And then just things like storms and things like that. It was just a death in the family. It was just like a lot of things was happening all at once. It was just crazy. But a lot of people did well. We did well. I mean, we've got I think we've got a Triceratops skull in the ground. We've got at least a couple.
Really?
We got a couple of hadrosaurs up in the Judith River Formation. The Triceratops is out in Montana. Got a few more animals down at in the Baker Ranch, and we've also got what looks like an articulated, which means as in life, hadrosaur down south of Newcastle. So that'll be exciting to see. It's in really hard sandstone, which it's the same type of sandstone we've like the Sternberg mummy in the American Museum of Natural History was found in.
Yeah.
And as it's actually not far from there, so there's hope for skin impressions. So that'll be interesting, and hopefully we'll start checking some of these out in the next couple of months.
And the skin impression thing, that makes me excited. So you said it's like it's alive, but it's dead.
You could say that. I mean, yeah, it's in maybe. I mean,
Pompeii?
I don't know.
Like
it
Pompeii?
Could be Pompeii. Yeah, the Pompeii with the contorted. You never know. I saw the tail, and the tail doesn't have any skin on it, so that doesn't make me too hopeful. But then again, it was also sitting out exposed, and so with that in mind, we'll see. But either way, seeing an articulated hadrosaur in the Lance is actually not an everyday thing. So that'll be exciting.
Man, what is like the so like if you go to a petting zoo, like there's like 50 goats to every one exciting animal to pet because
Yeah.
the goats are like goats are easy to get and they don't hurt you and they're relatively easy to make. What is the petting zoo goat of the fossil world? Like what is the thing you find the most of that everybody has like one or two on their desk?
It depends on what time period you're talking about, but
Yeah.
For the heck of it, I mean, we'll talk about the late Cretaceous here,
Yeah.
the end of the Cretaceous. I mean that is one of your petting zoo animals, a hadrosaur. It's a nice plant eating.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to get to. I was like, I wonder if that's like what they is.
It would be if they were still alive today. It would be your petting zoo animal. Followed by maybe a thessalsaur, which is a little guy. I have a feeling Triceratops was kind of a more bullish animal. So I wouldn't say that's a petting zoo, but at least more elephant type in a zoo.
Yeah. What's the one that like everybody has like on their desk? Like if they go out where you're at in that area, like everybody like, oh, you found your first this, of course, because everybody has that. It's like a paperweight fossil. Like everybody has one of those.
Well, usually it's bone chunk. I mean, the most common animal we see, like fossil bits and things like that, you see Triceratops. I mean, by far.
Yeah.
In both the lands. So it seems like in the lands, at least in the lands places that I've been working, Triceratops is just so abundant. It's kind of annoying because you want to find something besides
That's the answer I was getting.
That's what I mean. Right, you find some bone chunk and you pick it up and you see the blood grooves and stuff in it, and it's frill, and you're like, another Triceratops.
Like a new guy comes out and finds the frill thing. I found a Triceratops. A new guy found a trike. Throw it on the heap.
There are a lot of them. Now, maybe part of it is just a preservational bias because of the way the animal looked, but yeah, I'm from my if a person was going to go out for a day and they were going to go collecting and walking around, the most likely thing you're going to be seeing first, at least especially in the Lance and Hell Creek, is you're going to be seeing Triceratops bone, maybe followed by some hadrosaur material. And then you'll start getting into, some dromaeosaurs and, the small raptors and those sorts of things you're going to be seeing around. And then, Struthiomimus, the ostrich mimic dinosaurs, and then Rex and some other things. But also, I like to say in some of these formations, you're going to just as likely, if not more likely, see some of the animals that were living with them, like turtles. Turtles are, pieces of turtle shell and crocodile teeth and things like that. You see a lot of that stuff too. So, because obviously what everybody forgets is there were all kinds of things that were living in the environment with dinosaurs that were getting preserved at the same time.
Not just dinosaurs.
Not just dinosaurs.
It's like when somebody goes hunting and they call it the deer woods. I'm like, well, everything else lives there too.
That's exactly it. But, dinosaurs is what fetches people. But I'll tell you, if I'm out and one day and I find a good mammal tooth, since most of the mammals were very small at the time, I'm quite happy.
Yeah, that's got to be like kind of rare because that was like the phase 1 of mammals.
Yeah, they were a bit more diverse by this point in time, and I think we're starting to find out they were more diverse than we thought. But they were still small. The biggest one, Didelphodon, maybe the size of a collie, and that's your big mega mammal out there running around.
That was huge for that time period.
Oh yeah, most of them were just tiny, insectivores, look like voles, shrews, mice, those sorts of things are the things that were scurrying around.
I just picture a bunch of possums back then, just random little possum-looking things.
Yeah, some of them probably were.
Yeah.
A lot of them were marsupials too, and then there's another group called multidrobaculates that they went extinct. But yeah, I mean, again, very similar, size and that sort of thing. And those are the guys that are running around in all these formations here.
I know I discuss this every time. We've talked about this before, but the Dimetrodon, how were they closer to mammals?
So when we talk, go ahead.
No, I would say I've heard that, just because I do light research on that's one of my favorite subjects. And when I found that out, I was way too old to have found that out. and I was obsessed with it a little bit.
So it goes back since Dimetrodon's long before the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
There was a split in reptiles, and one of the key aspects is there's temporal openings for the jaw muscles, and you have reptiles have two, or your reptilia has two, and synapses, as they call them, have one. You also have more starting differentiating of teeth that you see in synapses. Dimetrodon doesn't really have it, but man, you go a little bit later in time, you'll start seeing gorgonopsids and some where you start seeing real specialization in teeth. Yeah, and you see some specialization in teeth in various dinosaurs and other reptiles, but not to the extent that mammals have it, where you have incisors and canines and molars and those sorts of things. And so those are the types of things you're looking at with Dimetrodon. And so, yeah, he somewhere along the line, he split off and he went, one way and went down that direction, and which eventually led to mammals, and your reptilia went the other way. It eventually led to archosaurs and dinosaurs and birds and modern day reptiles.
That's crazy because you always put them in. They always rope them in with the toys. It's always a Dimetrodon being there.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's popular and it's a weird creature. It's got a
fan.
Yeah, with a giant fin on its back, and I'm not quite sure how that got started. Maybe it was popular culture and those sorts of things is how it started. But yeah, I mean that's I'm listening to my children cry in the background.
It'd be me if mine weren't going right now.
Yeah. Well, you know what it's like, but yeah, I mean, it's evolution or cladistics and phylogeny and those sorts of things. It gets very complex, and I will say that changes all the time. I don't think something like Dimetrodon is going to be moved anytime soon, but those particular relationships do move around.
The Graham Hancock and what's his name that do the pre-Clovis ancient apocalypse stuff.
Oh yeah. I think Graham Hancock's one of them.
He's got that phrase that says everything keeps getting older. Talking about
that's true.
The humans. It was 10,000 years. Now it's 300,000. Every time somebody digs through another rock, it goes another 10,000.
Well, I'm sure a lot of these species that the problem is you have a geologic record, and it only gives you snapshots in time. It's often like I tell people, there's a popular opinion right now that dinosaurs are going extinct near the end of the Cretaceous, and maybe non-avian dinosaurs are going extinct, but I like to say that we also have a very small sample of what was going on at the time. We don't have things that were going on in the uplands, in the intermountain regions and things like that, because things just didn't deposit. We didn't have accumulation of sediment and those types of materials, and so because of that, you just don't have that snapshot. And so there's a lot of things that we're looking at right now that are just, they're a photograph of a period in time and a place in the world. And, who knows? I mean, I like to tell people, North America at the time was divided in two by the Western Interior Seaway. And we have very little knowledge of anything that was going on in the eastern part of North America because there was no major uplifts of mountains causing erosion and sediment. Most of it is just oceanic deposits. And so who knows what's over there? The only reason we know anything about the dinosaurs that were on that side of North America is because, excuse me, is because we have some of these dinosaurs floated out to the sea and they sank to the bottom and we got some fossils out of them. Otherwise, we don't really know much. While I was over here on the western side of North America, you have what they call the severe and Laramide orogenies that were going on, or uplifting mountains. And these mountains were building up. And as they built up, they eroded, and all the sediment was pouring down to the oceans and the seaway and was burying things. So it's great. But again, that's why I said there's so much that we don't know.
And the mountains over here are already up and coming back down by the time that happened.
Oh yeah.
They were already on their peak.
Yeah.
That's why those we got a lot of Colorado Springs folks come into Huntsville from different because they got the military wing there, and we have a military wing
Uh-huh.
here, and and like our mountains are taller than these little Smoky Mountains. I'm like, dude, the Smoky Mountains are 400 million years old, and the Rockies are only like 70. I was like, they're 3 times more at least.
Yeah, I mean, at one
There's
time,
a reason. Used to be that
some
big.
estimate that the Appalachians were as tall as the Himalayas.
Look at
But
them now. If they are what they are now, they had to be a lot bigger to come
oh,
back
for
down.
sure. I mean, I like to point out to people that, as impressive as the Himalayas are, they're not very old. They're only like 30 million years
Mm,
old. They're pretty young.
rookies,
They're
rookie
rookies.
mountains.
That's right. They're
Get out of here.
rookies.
Beat it, kid. F and G's.
So, you know, but people in Colorado like their mountains, so they
I
think
do.
they I've noticed a lot of people from Colorado often are surprised that there's mountains in other states.
Yeah, I was shooting a B-roll for another channel I'm trying to bring up today of some mountains where I'm at here, and it's just the Southern Appalachians, and they're just as pretty in my opinion as the Rockies are.
Yeah,
They're flat, a lot of flatness to them though here. No peaks.
right. And here's the other thing is that you go into the Rockies and some ranges of the Rockies, like I like to jokingly say the Bighorns, in my opinion, which are just west of me, are far prettier than the Colorado Rockies. Even though they're not quite as tall, but they're far prettier and they're more glaciated and those sorts of things. And then to the east of me is the Black Hills, which, they're a little taller than the Appalachians, but they are just so beautiful. It's
There's not many things I've seen in my brief travels than the Tetons that look prettier, or just being up against them, just the way they look. It's insane.
the Tetons are super impressive.
Yeah, and they're named after boobies, and nobody ever changed it. That's the
That
funny
I
part.
didn't know. I didn't know that
Yeah.
one, but I guess it doesn't surprise me because there's so many weird names. It's just like I finally got somebody to answer me the question of because out here there's so many things like Devil's Den and Goblin's
Devil's Devil's
Hollow
Devil's
and
Tower.
Devil's Tower and all these different things that are named out here, and you're like, why on earth are these like all demonic names? And somebody finally told me that who is a bit of a historian out here said, well, that's because if you're a pioneer and you're making your way out here, and you run into one of these canyons or something like that, well, that's the devil's work right there. We're going to give it a name because that's hard. We can't travel through that.
The Devil's Tower.
Yeah, it all has to do Badlands. All these things have to do with traveling and could you farm it? And so if you couldn't farm it, couldn't travel through it, well, we're going to give it a bad name.
Back then, it was if it could kill you, it was getting a bad name out of it. You got all those names.
Well, not just that, but the amount of time it would take you to travel.
Can you
I
imagine?
mean, yeah, I was telling my wife this when I first moved. We got a 26-foot truck and we moved out of northern Illinois, moved cross country, and it took me, about 17 hours. And I said, now imagine if this was like 140 years ago, that would have been about 5 months.
With a wagon and 2 cows.
That's right. So, I mean, totally different. I mean, we're so spoiled in this country. It's ridiculous where we are with modern technology.
And what gets me is how the gateway to the West was Missouri. It's like right there. It's not even the West. It's still like on the coast as far as I'm concerned. It's like 2 states away.
Everybody's got a different opinion about where the West starts. And I've noticed that. I've heard west of the Mississippi, you're the West. You're
That's just what they called it. Like the arch. That's where Oregon Trail starts. Is Kansas City.
Yeah, it's in Kansas City, but I think the arch is in St. Louis.
Yeah, it's the same. It's I think the Oregon Trail starts in Kansas City.
No, you're right. It's around Kansas. I drove through there once and went to wild. Independence. But it's just like people out here. They're like, I would consider Western South Dakota is part of the West, but a lot of people out here are like, it's not the West.
Oh, it has to be. To me, it is.
Well,
South
yeah,
Dakota?
yeah. I mean, basically, all these people, Wild Bill Hickok and so forth, and all the famous. I found out the only real shootout, that you see in all the famous westerns, the standoffs. The only one that happened in recorded history happened in Deadwood, South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I'm concerned, that's west then.
What about OK Corral? I mean, that was a big one.
I think that was Arizona.
Yeah. That's far. Yeah, it is Arizona. Well, my in-laws are there right now. They were at the OK Corral yesterday.
Oh, were they?
Mm-hmm. I knew it wasn't in South Dakota. I was going to say it was definitely in the West. Yeah, I would say for some reason I'm looking at a map now like I've never seen the United States before, and I don't know why I don't know why we're talking about this, given what I was wanting the subject matter to be. But for some reason, I don't include Nebraska and Kansas, but like Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, and the Dakotas to me is where the West starts.
The best definition.
It's like a concave.
Yeah, I mean, the best definition that I've seen, and I think it's for the West, and I tend to agree with this one, is what is it, the 101st or is the 100th meridian line, mm-hmm. And it's basically at that point the plains your elevation starts going up, and that's all because of the Rockies. So from that point on, you just keep going up and up and up and up. And the best place you can see that is if you're driving across 90 and you hit Chamberlain, South Dakota, which is midway South Dakota. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's flat farmland. It's flat as a pancake. And then all of a sudden you just dip down, go across the Missouri River, and it's nothing but all these high rolling hills, and the topography and the climate just changes instantly. To me, that's kind of where the West starts.
Yeah, scientifically, yeah, it definitely is. I was shocked at how much it just went up like that as you went west. I thought it was all the same, and then you hit the Rockies, and all of a sudden it's really high. But no, it's like a giant pyramid.
In fact, Rapid City, which is 2 hours east of me, I think is like 3,800 feet, and we're 4,600 feet here in Gillette.
Mm-hmm. But the crazy thing is, it's flat there still. It's not like a mountain.
Sort of flat. We're kind of like they define this as high plains, but we're kind of an intermountain basin. We're between two mountain ranges, but yeah, I wouldn't call it flat. I mean, it's quite hilly here.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you're not like on a mountain.
No, I'm not on a mountain. You can see the mountains though from certain points in town.
But like in this Montana, I wouldn't think it would be that big, but I'm looking at it now, it's like 3,400 feet up.
Yeah, it's everything's pretty high up here. Yeah. In fact, when I moved, the unloading boxes, I was really huffing and puffing because of the elevation change. Because I went from like 720 feet in Chicago to 4,600 feet out here.
That's crazy. I'm only at 581 here in Huntsville. It must really go up. That's crazy. I remember when we flew across. When you fly across, you can see it. See the landscape change. It starts turning green.
Oh yeah.
Get closer to the Mississippi. We did
it's crazy.
We did the turnaround. I saw my hometown out the window. Just haphazardly. I looked down, I saw the nuclear plant and the bridge right beside it. I'm like, there's only one place in the world. And I got to look at the nuclear plants in the South because I knew we had to do the flight path down to almost South Alabama and come back up to go to Charlotte. And I'm looking at all the nuclear plants, and none of them have a bridge near them. I said, it had to be that. I mean, there's no place that looks like that.
Oh, I had that experience a couple times. In fact, like when we were moving out here, since my wife was already living out here, and I literally was flying out because I was only able to stay here for short times. And that winter, not this winter's been incredibly mild, but the winter before was brutal. And, there were like 3-foot snow drifts. So they were closing the interstate down. So I was having to fly out here. And I remember I flew out of O'Hare Airport, and instantly I was like, oh, look, there's the Fox River. Oh, look, there's the mall. Oh, look, there's my parents' house.
Yeah, it's weird when you say it, because you start recognizing, you think, oh, I'm just being like that, whatever the equivalent to pareidolia is.
Yeah, I know what you're talking landscape. About.
But then I was like, there's no way, there's no other place in the world where we could be going to what I know is northeast. And I look down and the river's doing that angle with that bridge and that nuclear plant. And it was crazy because we just came out of some bad turbulence, and all of a sudden it opened up and I saw my hometown.
Well, yeah. Well, I will admit that I absolutely hate flying because I think I was on a flight once that had that wind shear where they just kind of drop like a
Hmm. I
thousand
don't
feet
like
or
it.
whatever. And ever since then, I've just anytime we hit turbulence, I'm just I'm braced to my seat, and I'm like, not again, not again, not again, not again.
I don't like it. I don't like flying if I don't have to. I don't mind it. Like I'll do it. I don't get. I don't freak out like Rain Man or anything.
Right?
But like I'd rather not. I, I'm just like just kind of doing this the whole way. Just
Yeah,
I don't enjoy like listening to music, reading. I'm just hoping it ends.
yeah. That's basically what I'm at, and flying out here too. It was crazy because you get in one of these little Cessnas or whatever because the only way to get to Gillette is you got to fly to Denver. So you fly to Denver, and I remember when I was leaving one day, and they were having like 70-mile-an-hour winds out here, and we're taking off, and I'm watching the plane slowly as we're just getting off the runway. Slowly, the plane is moving to one side away from the runway as the wind is just pushing it. And I'm
Yep.
thinking this isn't going to be a good flight. And sure enough, it wasn't. I mean, the flight attendant wasn't even allowed to get out of his seat or anything.
How long was it?
It
How
was
long of a
about an
flight?
hour.
Yeah, that's not bad. The 4 hour ones when it's like that's the worst.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I took a flight to years ago. I took a flight to Australia and 18 hours in the air, and I'm just like, oh, I just rejoiced the minute my feet hit the ground.
I've never taken an international flight, but I don't know how I'd handle it. Like it's 24 hours, 10 hours. That's so long. Like what do you do?
Well, yeah, you try to distract yourself as much as you can, and try not to look out the window because, like, I remember when my wife and I went on our honeymoon and we went to Italy and we're flying over Greenland and I'm looking down at the ice sheets and I'm like, if we go down, we're pretty much dead.
The ice sheet. That'd be something to see. So that's what that would distract me. It would be in the turbulence in the clouds that would make me irritated and anxious.
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, you never know how bad the turbulence is going to be. Though the only thing that gave me comfort on that horrible flight is I had talked to a pilot, one of the pilots before that, and she was telling me that anybody that flies into Denver or flies along the Rocky Mountain front has to have like a what was it, 11,000 hours of flight time or something like that, because they got to be specialized with all the turbulence and the winds that come off the mountains.
I believe it. I've never been over and or near the Rockies without a little bit of bloop, bloop, bloop. You feel it
Oh
in your
yeah,
seat, just like nothing's happening, but you feel it.
it's crazy.
It could be clear as day, and it's just insane.
Oh yeah, the mountains just, especially Wyoming, South Dakota, and those areas because of the mountains, because of Hudson Bay, and I mean the temperature changes and stuff out here are just crazy.
Then there's the World War II pilots flying over the hump over Tibet and China, over the Mount Everest and all that.
Oh
Have to
yeah,
get they can't come down to a certain altitude. Like your cruising altitude is where the mountains are.
I know it. I mean
That's gotta be insane. Look out the window, there's a mountain right there. We're at 30,000 feet.
yeah. There is no way you'd ever get me to do a flight into the Himalayas. I'll take a bus.
I'll take a Sherma or whatever they're called. Let them pull me up
Or
there.
yeah, one of those a donkey or whatever, but you
Yeah,
ain't get me to fly over that.
I'll ride a dang rickshaw for all I care. Which
Anything.
which brings me since we've just crossed the Himalayas, we can talk about what
Oh
I wanted to
boy.
mention. Yeah, we just crossed the Himalayas. I wanted to see where you were with Gigantopithecus. I've kind of been on a small kick lately, and if you knew anything about if
I
I
don't
didn't know if
know
that crossed in your area or not.
I don't know too much about it except that, it's a giant ape and
Well, there's Australopithecus too. They're
well
from
that's more of
Australia.
a human ancestor.
Yeah, there's all those weird ones.
There's a lot, and there's a lot of now. I also believe that some of these hominids, as they're technically called, I think they're going to
Hmm.
be condensed as time goes on. I think we have so little material that there's something slightly different, and they write it off as a new species or a new
Hmm.
genus. just like with dinosaurs, very often happens. You know, uh, though sometimes it doesn't, but more often you start seeing all these species start clumping
Yeah.
together
Didn't
because, as with
it
any
happen with
species, there's lots of morphological variance in the
yeah.
bones.
Didn't it happen with the Protoceratops? They
I
said
don't
it wasn't a real thing.
I don't know about that one. That one's still valid, but I know some of them, like my beloved dinosaur, childhood dinosaur monoclonius, isn't considered valid anymore.
Just a baby something of
It's
baby
yeah,
other.
it's like clumped together of several different specimens. I think that happened to Ultrasaurus too. From back in the '70s, it was like this is the largest dinosaur ever, and then they're like, nah, actually, this is a few different dinosaurs that they just clumped together.
Now that what the monoclonius, that's the little Triceratops.
Yeah, it was like a
That was
smaller version. It
mhm.
was a
That may have been the
ceratopsian.
one. That may have been one I thought about that they said was just a baby Triceratops.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. They've there's so many theories. I mean, I've just been dealing with a gajillion questions, and the paleo world kind of re-erupted this January when they started talking about. I think it was Nick Longrich. Yeah, it was Nick Longrich and his paper on the validity of Nanotyrannus being a valid genus again and not a juvenile rex. Which for some of us field people, we kind of feel that yeah, there's definitely another tyrannosaur out here.
That
So it's things like that happen all the time.
yeah, and if they did it the same thing with modern humans within a million years, they would think it's a dozen different species.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because you
I
got like
mean,
me and Shaq, and they're not the same.
right. Well, you look at Shaq and you, or me and a pygmy from Africa or an Aborigine, and some
Hmm.
people might actually go, "Well, this is a different species," when it's not. It's just variance within a species.
They have. This is gonna get me canceled. They're going to have an archaeological dig at the roll-off farm and think they found like a different species of human, like a mini person.
You
And
know, I mean, somebody may dig me up and think I'm some different species and say my neighbor is, for all I
mhm,
know. I mean,
yeah,
and again, the other thing with that I always want to remember about, make sure I state about hominids is that with hominids, there's this material is so scant. I mean, you just don't have a lot of it, so that also makes it very difficult to determine what's a different species and what's not a different species when you don't have a great array of morphological characteristics.
hmm. It didn't the reason we have isn't the reason we have a lot of dinosaurs is because of all the geological changes happening back
Yeah,
in the day.
that's what I was talking
Yeah,
about orogenies and talking about
yeah,
mountain uplift and stuff is when
yeah.
you get mountains that are uplifting and they're moving upward, you know, as they're obviously more exposed. And so when that exposure happens, you're getting more
Hmm.
erosion happening, and that stuff is flowing downward towards the lowest point, which is going to be an ocean. And so the more uplift you have, and out here it was very close, you're going to have a lot of deposition and
Hmm.
buildup of sediments. And so that means that things that die here are going to be more easily get buried.
And in the ice age kind of time frame, there wasn't a lot of that going on other than glaciers. It was like the big thing then.
No, and the exceptions to the rule are, the every once in a while you had somewhere that was eroding and you had sand
Mhm.
blowing around, or Florida's
Mud.
really good because you had mud coming down in those rivers and stuff like that. La Brea tar pits, you had a predator
Yeah,
trap.
it's like a it's kind of like a more localized kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't see it because again the deposition outside of a few places, you just don't see it,
you didn't have
and
like the
that's
entire continent just there.
right, right. You didn't have the erosion and stuff that was going on, but then again, there's other places in the world where that was going on, and I'm sure there's uh, pretty good preservation. I know the North Sea, because so many of those there was a lot of erosion and stuff going on. A lot of those animals got buried, and are now they dredge them up as they're dredging the bottom of the North Sea.
There's a guy in Alaska that has that bone farm. I don't know if you heard about that.
I have not.
And it's like 5 acres, and it's every they can just he takes and sprays his uh gold mining hose into the side of this hill, and like tusks fall out like straws, and I'm just piles and piles of tusk and cavemen and tools and wolves and animals that they say didn't exist in that part of the world. And he's like, well, I got on my property, bub.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
I could totally believe that. I mean, and well, again, there's just like with so many controversies in science. Again, when did humans get here? Well, that's been a
Hmm.
pretty controversial subject, and now it looks pretty conclusive that people were here based on those footprints at White Sands. That they were at least here. What is it, 23,000 years ago?
Hmm.
Which pushed it back another 10,000 years. And
Yep.
and my personal opinion is because hunter gatherers leave such a little trace of their existence here. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if people were here 100,000 years ago.
Yeah, there'd be no way of knowing.
There would be no
I,
way of knowing.
I think that
They,
Alaskan thing. I think he has so much because he's right there on where the Bering Strait was. Like it's everything was coming across right there.
well,
It
yeah,
just
I think that's a classic example, and another classic example would be. I will not rule out the hypothesis that some of the related groups to Cro-Magnon came following ice sheets across the Atlantic too. I think
Mhm.
a lot of people got here far earlier than we give them credit for. It's just like you know, there's still this ongoing debate, which I think is silly, about did the Polynesians make it to the Americas? And not only did they have stories and stuff about that sound vaguely familiar to the Americas, they had sweet potatoes, and potatoes are from the Americas. But also the fact that they made it to every single island basically in the Pacific, and you're
Mhm.
telling me they missed the Americas.
They just stopped. They didn't go any
Yeah, they
further.
just stopped when they got really close. They just stopped. To me, is absurd. But you still have that debate going on, which to me is ridiculous.
I think it's a closed book. I've seen Moana. They were voyagers that made it.
And they were, as far as I'm concerned, they were the best sailors that ever lived.
Hmm. They were
I
crazy.
mean, yeah, I mean,
Yes,
you made it
They
to
had
Easter
no.
Island
Yeah,
or the
that's a
whole.
long way away. That's almost South America. Like they were
It
almost there.
is. It is, or even the Hawaiian Islands, which are super isolated. We take it for granted now with our modern travel, with how isolated the Hawaiian Islands are, and they made it there. It's crazy.
6 hour flight. That's how far away Hawaii is.
Yeah, I did that once. It was 8 hours from Chicago, and again, flights.
I'm okay. So it's three. I'd look it up. I knew it was close to South America. Still 3,000 miles. What's another? They made it that far.
Well, if you made it, what is it, 10,000 miles or whatever from their
Yeah,
starting point, I think they can make another 3,000 miles.
to Point Nemo. I made it across Point Nemo in a canoe.
Yeah, maybe the only place they didn't get to was the Galapagos. I think nobody made it to the Galapagos, but other than that, I think they basically made it. I'm convinced of that one.
The turtles ate them.
Oh yeah, we'll
I mean,
go
you
with
wouldn't
that.
know. I mean, the native South American and Polynesians. I mean, at 50,000 feet, look close to the same genetically.
There are some genetic
They have
differences, but
some.
yeah, there's very similar. And if I recall correctly, some of the people from Easter Island do have um, uh, American Indian DNA.
Hmm.
So again, to me, it just doesn't make sense that they never got here. Like I said, they were the best sailors the world has ever seen, and
Hmm.
so to me, it's it's not a possibility that they didn't make it here.
I've never understood what the big controversy is to thinking that we did have earlier contact than we think. Like, what are you gonna? What's it gonna? You gonna like lose your degree if a doctor finds something else that's wrong or something wrong that they missed?
Well, people like narratives, and they like having a stable narrative that
Yeah, I
says
guess.
things, and unfortunately, that's not a good way to approach science either. I mean, you have to be open to these possibilities.
I, th- I,
I
I
see a
thought maybe
lot of
like
it in paleontology where
yeah,
there's narratives that if it doesn't fit the narrative, then they reject that idea, even if the evidence may be contrary to it.
that's insane because all we heard in 2020 was follow the science and everything's about science, and all of a sudden, like the same people, if it comes to something like that, it's just like, well, whack, guys a whack job.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of that goes on, and it shouldn't be that way, and it's unfortunate that it's that way. But yeah, a lot of that goes on, and not to say that there's not good science done. There's a lot of good science done,
Oh
but
yeah, I figure most of it's good.
there's also a lot of preconceived notions and biases that if you have a closed mind, then you're going to be running into trouble, and
I
that's
think
what we're seeing.
from what I've looked at, just peeking my head into the paranormal cryptid world because it's fun to talk about. Um,
Fair enough.
I think a lot of the reason we fail to pursue these fringe things is because of funding, and they can't get anything. You can't get like boats and a crew if nobody will fund you, and you sound like a whack job going after something that may or may not be a fairy tale.
Oh, there's truth in that.
You know,
There's truth about funding and things like that. I mean, another thing is you have to use some logical probabilities that
mhm.
what are the chances I'm going to find of that? It's like my own personal um, opinion on Bigfoot is I do not believe Bigfoot most likely
Mhm.
exists. I hate to break it to you,
No,
but
it's part of my newfound. It's part of the reason you're back here is because of that with me. Like I'm trying to.
oh, I am okay with that. However, there are stories, and I think if I recall correctly, what it's called was the Orang Pendek in
Mhm.
Indonesia, and this idea of a small ape man, living in the forest, including I think it was some Dutch explorers who said they found it, and you could write that off right away and just say it was an orangutan, but then they found the dwarf hominid on in Indonesia in Java, and that made me raise eyebrows. Tolkien once said that history becomes legend and legend becomes myth. It was from the Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
And I think we do at the same time, when you have stories or something of, this legendary creature or something like that, I think to just totally write it off as something made up, yeah, maybe, but there's usually an origin story there.
Mhm.
And it may not be exactly what the people are saying it is, but there is some grain of truth that underlies it.
I'd like to see the. That's why reason I ask about the Gigantopithecus. Like I've actually had a someone that did their doctoral thesis on it on 2 weeks ago, and
Oh, well, there you go.
some of the experiences he had in his research following that, he doesn't think that what we consider Bigfoot now actually is Gigantopithecus anymore. But I'm trying to like run it all to ground. I'm getting everything in because everybody has the crazy people that say they have it on their farm, and some may be telling truth, and some may be trying to get a book deal. I'm just
I
trying to
think.
I'm trying to avoid the crazies for a little while.
Well, no, I totally get that. Yeah, I would say that if there was some type of unexplored animal in the United States, it would definitely be in the American West and not in Kentucky.
Hmm.
I'm not convinced that I always jokingly chuckle a bit under my breath when I hear somebody say, "I have dinner with Bigfoot on every Thursday evening." Sure you do. Or
There's a lot of them.
yeah, oh, I bet there is, or that Bigfoot lives in the suburbs of Louisville. Yeah, I'm sure.
So you know
But
Ernie too. You've met Ernie then.
I have not. I literally just made that off the top of my head.
You know
I
Ernie.
I listen,
I'm
you
just
know,
playing Ernie if you're listening.
if there's one thing that I can tell you is that when you do stuff with dinosaurs, you start hearing all kinds of weird stories and weird theories and stuff. I remember once I was at a show in Iowa, and I had a bunch of, if you're familiar with ammonites, I don't know if you are, but
I don't know.
they're
I don't think so.
okay. So they're basically, what a nautilus is.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's like a chambered nautilus. Basically, if I had something here, I would show it, but it's like a shell, and you had a squid that came out of it, and they're still alive today. Nautiluses, ammonites
Hmm.
are closely related, and so I had a bunch of these fossil ammonites. So they're these coiled things, and I had them out on a table. Then this woman comes up to me, and and uh, and she asked me what these are, and I tell her the whole story that these are, basically what I said. They're basically, think of squid with shells, and they use the shells to help control their buoyancy in the water, yada yada yada. And I finished, and she was like, "I think you're wrong." I was like, "Oh." Well, what do you think they are? She said,
Do you?
these were tools from the Atlanteans.
Oh yeah, you told me about that one.
Yes, the Atlanteans. And I literally, Steve, my one of my closest friends, the one who was the head of Paleo Prospectors, who just passed away. You know, I turned around to him and I said, "Steve, you live in Atlanta. You tell me what this is."
Steve, you're from Atlanta.
I mean, the stories you hear like that are just crazy. Or I even heard one once where I was working on a trackway in Texas, and I may have told you this story, so this guy, um, said he was a geologist, and okay, and so he was asking us to explain the geology, and then he was like, so let me tell you about where I think the dinosaurs came from, and I was like, well, here the red flag starts, goes up, and I'm starting, well, maybe he's got something, you know,
Did you open a
that's
beverage first?
reasonable. No, I hadn't. It was only like 9 a.m. I wish I had, because what he told me is he's like, that part in the Bible where it talks about the Nephilim? It's like, yeah, I do. He's like, the sons of God and the daughters of men, mated. Yeah. And it made the race of giants. Yeah. That race of giants was the dinosaurs. Oh. So you're telling me that people bred and made reptiles, basically.
Yeah. Hey, that might be misinterpreted a bit.
Yeah, I would say so, but I mean, I was a little floored on that one. I actually didn't know what to say. That was the first time I heard somebody propose dinosaurs arose that way.
There is
And
that painting with the elephants or camels that they drew, and they look like brontosaurus. I can't think of what they're actually called. Not cephalopods. What's the
sauropods.
brontosaurus? Sauropods.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good Lord, I'm off my game tonight.
Oh, that's all right.
Golly. Yeah, it's like they look like that, but I think what the interpretation was is they were drawing camels, but they never saw a camel.
Well, that could be
weird.
And
weird.
I don't know how long ago they were. They do have llamas and stuff in the Andes.
Yeah.
And I have had some familiarity with that. And actually, when people first came over here, there were camels in North America. There were horses and a lot of other things that went extinct. After the Ice Age ended, and so I'm sure there's some residual memory there. I mean, that's been part of my whole hypothesis, in part with Bigfoot. Is I sometimes wonder that as people were moving out, into the vast wilderness, and they're encountering all these different hominids, Gigantopithecus and Neanderthals and all these different groups, totally world that's alien to us, where it's just humans everywhere. I wonder if there's some residual memory there where people are thinking to themselves, that's that big ape, or that's that other group, that's that other thing that's over there. And it's just something residual in our memory that's been carried on.
It also makes you wonder how well the story is preserved, because you get the Native American tales of what is, may or may not be actually what you're talking about Bigfoot, but you think maybe they're a couple hundred years old. What if they're like 3,000 years old or more?
Oh, they could be. And it could be something that, who knows? This story was passed on when some of these Native American ancestors encountered Gigantopithecus in Asia before they even crossed the Bering Strait.
Could be that old. Yeah, you don't know. I mean, anything could happen. And like the last 50 Gigantopithecus may have still been here 150 years ago or 10,000 years ago. And like the mammoths that were on that island during the pyramids getting built. Everybody talks about.
You don't know. I mean, there's the world is a vast and crazy place, and like I was talking about dinosaurs too. All we're dealing with is snapshots in time, and one thing that I've encountered when I really got into reading ancient writing and ancient peoples is, people back then weren't stupid either. We think we're so much more sophisticated because of our electricity and our indoor plumbing.
TikTok.
But yeah, TikTok. But people aren't stupid. And so they would see things, they would see bones, and sometimes you would have stories of giants and stuff. But I think sometimes too, these people would see dinosaur bones or things rolling out, and they'd be like, oh, maybe that's a big thing that we've never seen before and never existed, or that our people never saw. It was from a time long ago.
I couldn't imagine finding a femur of like a sauropod or like a T Rex, and just there it is. What is that? It's a 7 foot
Well,
leg bone.
yeah, I mean, that's the other thing that I often like to joke with people is, I recently saw one of those um, paintings where it had like a dinosaur that was perfect, that was wearing out, and it was a bunch of Native Americans and they were exploring it. And I was like, man, I wish the dinosaurs that I found actually looked like that.
Hmm.
They usually look more like a pile of rubble with some bone coming out, and it's not very distinct, but you recognize the marrow and stuff as it wears out. Only once in a while do I see a bone where it's like, oh yeah, there's a bone right there.
Is that like the 6 foot turkey scene from Jurassic Park, where it's perfectly preserved?
Yeah, I wish. I mean, I still, as much as I love that movie, I still cringe that excavation, because I mean, I wish you had an animal that was just perfectly articulated sitting there that just fell over and died. I mean, I wish, but so far I haven't seen one that you could just sit there and brush off and it looks
Yeah,
all nice and pretty.
just covered in mud. That's all only thing that
Yeah, just
happened.
covered in mud, and it's just pretty. It's I have yet to see that, and no glue or anything like that.
Hmm. I remember watching documentaries when I was little about paleontology. It would just be a giant rock covered in plaster, and they would just ship it across the country.
Well,
It's,
one of the reasons they do that is because the you don't want to do a lot of work in the field.
no,
You want to do that back in a lab where you can have um, do have stereoscopes and magnification, and you can use specialized equipment like air abrasion, air scribes, and things like that. So your goal really was, when you're out in the field with most of these things, is to just get it out as much as you can, try to get the matrix around it, and then
hmm,
put a plaster jacket over it, and which can be a number of things, but usually there's a separation layer, aluminum foil,
I really never knew what
tissue
they were
paper.
doing when I watched that. So I'm glad you're explaining this to me. I was like, what are they doing
Yeah,
that for?
I mean, it's a technique. It's called jacketing, and
Hmm.
basically what you're doing is you uncover it is to get the parameters of the animal, and once you have the parameters of the animal, then you want to dig down and trench around it, and you want to then put a separation layer, like I said, aluminum foil or tissue paper. I've done both. It depends on how delicate the bone is. If I want it to really stick, and I try to use tissue paper because it tends to stick to the matrix better. And then you put this using burlap and sometimes fiberglass and other things dipped in plaster to make a jacket around it that'll hold it all together. So when you take it out, it'll come back intact. And then you can deal with all the fine things when you're back in a lab.
I bet that does make it. Has that gotten easier, or has technology gotten better with the labs as far as removing it from the rock?
Oh yeah, and
Okay.
sometimes with certain things, they'll just conclude that it is better to not even prep it at all. They'll just try to do an MRI or something like that on the fossil so they can get a three-dimensional view of it. And because ultimately with prep, there's a high probability or an almost certainty of minute amounts of damage, and so
Oh
you're
yeah.
removing that possibility. But I'll tell you, it's grueling work. I mean, I'm a fossil preparer during the off season, and I'm sometimes I'll get a specimen, and like I'm working right now on a Admonosaurus or Hadrosaur tibia and fibula, and I'm not even close to being done, and I'm already 40 hours into it.
It's like 100% chance of damaging it. Some. There's no way around it.
Yeah, there's always going to be something. Something's going to move. Something's going to shift. So, you do your best,
Hmm.
and but as long as you're patient, you can bring out all the fine details and everything like that.
So they
Plus,
do the MRIs then. Okay.
they do.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine actually did an X-ray a while ago on a plesiosaur skull from the Niobrara Chalk in Kansas, and it turned out great, and it's actually very useful for as he's prepping it out, I'm sure.
Hmm. I imagine
Um,
so.
well, it gives you an idea of what's there, though.
Hmm.
Those plesiosaur skulls are almost unheard of from the chalk. So to actually, first of all, find a plesiosaur and then find one with a skull, because the skulls are very small compared to these massive
Yeah.
animals with a long neck.
It's like a like a non-venomous snake. Like you got this giant body, and that the head's the size of the end of your thumb.
Yeah, basically. I
Yeah,
mean, that's what an elasmosaur is.
just
It's think of a mixture between a snake and a seal, with
hmm
the snake being a really
yeah,
long neck and a really tiny head,
and all kinds of little fangs.
and all kinds of little teeth.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, whenever they do the MRIs and take that, do they ever take them and put them in like a 3D printer and make like a model that way?
That I don't know. You would have to ask a
Because that
lab
would
technician who does that. It wouldn't
that would
surprise me if
sound
they
like
do.
that would sound next level. Because you got here's your fossil, and even if it breaks, there it is because it's an exact replica.
Well, to quote Alan Grant, if it ever comes to that, I think we're out of a job.
Yeah, don't you mean extinct?
Yeah, exactly. It's
come
exactly where it'll go.
come at me with a Jeff Goldblum reference. I'll come right back at you, right
Well, there
across
you
the
go.
net. Dinosaurs had their chance. It's my favorite one. Chilean sea bass, I believe.
Boy, that
Me
sounds
and my
good right now. Chili
It
sea
does.
bass for some
Yeah.
reason.
I'm not hungry at all. We had a fish fry today, and I think I overdid myself.
Well, I haven't
Mm,
eaten yet. Of course, you're what? What are you in Eastern time now?
Central.
Oh, you're in Central, so you're
Yeah,
only an
yeah.
hour ahead of me.
Yeah, and that's why when you said 6:30, I'm like, that's just another 30 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
was. I always get confused because every time I go that way, like I go to Georgia and it's in Tennessee, it's just like Eastern time, Central time, Eastern time, Central
yeah.
time. It flips
Georgia's
around
all
so
Eastern.
much.
Georgia's all
Okay,
Eastern. Tennessee has Central and Eastern.
it confuses me. I wish they
Just
would just draw straight lines and say this is what it is.
yeah, just if you look at Tennessee, just follow the Georgia line straight up, and that's the Eastern time zone.
Okay,
Because I grew up on the Tennessee Georgia border, and so like
okay.
all my TV came from Chattanooga via the antenna, and so it was always in Eastern time, and it screwed me up as a small child. I never because I've been computing this forever. So when people have hard time with it, I'm like, it's not that hard. And I schedule conferences for the army like across the world, and so I'm like, I got like time zone clocks everywhere. So it's not that big to me anymore. Some people just have a rough time with it, especially doing the podcast. Like, what time is it now?
Right.
Like, I'm in Bluff Creek, California. I'm like, well, I know that's 2 hours. I'm like, what time is that? I'm like, I can do it. I can handle it. It's 2 hours, man. Mountain time is 1 hour. Everybody knows that.
Are you sure?
Arizona,
Because
no one knows.
I still have people that are like, "What weird
Oh,
time zone are you in?" I'm like, "That's Mountain Time. It's not a weird time zone."
well, yeah, some people, I mean, I say everybody knows that. That's just me being smart of it because not everybody, I don't think some people know mountain time exists.
Oh, I'm
I think
sure.
there's,
Well, hey, you want a conspiracy theory? My wife's been telling me about this. There's people that think Wyoming doesn't exist. So,
wow, that's kind of odd because I saw it with my own eyes. It's like
oh, there you
Tomorrowland,
go.
like Tomorrowland.
I mean, I'm surprised that it doesn't exist either, especially because I had to get a driver's license and you know license plates and all those other things moving here.
How do you explain Chris Ledoux if Wyoming doesn't exist? He's like their mascot.
Uh, I mean, I get it to a certain extent, considering that like nobody lives here. There's only like
Yeah,
580,000 people, but uh, I don't. I could go on and on about where people get weird conspiracy theories, and as much as I love Wyoming, I will say that this is spooks is what they call them out here, and conspiracy theories are big.
I bet. I bet I would get along great in Wyoming. I know the time I had there was fun.
Yeah,
It was
it's there's always that border of the conspiracy theory that is believable and those that are just like, what are you talking about?
oh, there's a lot of those. Birds aren't real. Wyoming doesn't exist.
Oh yeah,
And
or I think I mentioned to you when we were talking on Facebook once the alien human hybrids are running the government.
yeah, well, that's true. That's been proven scientifically.
Well, I can believe that Biden is an alien human hybrid.
What I had a kind of a related thing when we came through Idaho there below, Earthquake Lake in Montana,
Uh huh.
and you come down. I think it's something like Argonne, Idaho, before it cuts back in toward the Tetons.
Uh huh.
And we drove in. We were in Idaho for an hour, and stopped at several gas stations, and no one was there. It was like time had stopped. They were all closed.
No, I've
It was the
seen
weirdest thing.
I've seen that in a few places. There's a few places like that in Wyoming, and there there was a few places when I was once I was moving a friend of mine to helping him move to California, and we drove across 650, which goes from Delta, Utah, all the way to Carson City, Nevada, and it's called the loneliest road in America. And there are some
Mhm.
towns out there where it's just like I think everything's stopped. Time is stopped.
Yeah. Nothing was. We had to pee behind like some shed. We all had to go to the bathroom so bad. We had to just stop. I said, we're on a wanted poster in Idaho somewhere right now.
I did that. I did something sort of similar to that, but it was a little different. There was a bar in a town called Ingomar, Montana, and I had to pee. And you go in, and it's like a nice bar and everything. And then I opened the door to go, men's bathroom, and I opened it, and it goes outside, and there's a trough there.
You
So
open the door and it goes outside. That's so
a
Montana.
trough.
It's not funny.
I
I would
mean,
just
it was.
use the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how often that trough's been cleaned because it's stuck pretty bad. But then again, I don't know how many visitors actually. I think Ingomar is basically a bar, if I recall correctly.
Walked outside. Yeah, that. Well, kind of what I think happened is, other than it being Idaho and pretty much way out there, there weren't any people, obviously. But like this was 2021 in June. Like COVID had just happened, and Delta variant was like a month and a half away. So nobody knew what to do. Do we go to work? Do we open? Like it was that weird. Everybody was in a kung fu stance.
Yeah.
Like, are we safe? Is it not? Damage report. It's like Captain Picard. Damage
Right. No,
everybody was doing that.
That actually makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it would explain things. I mean, I don't recall anything that drastic happening out here that summer, but the whole thing with COVID was weird anyway. So,
I talked to a lady from Two Dot, Montana, and they ain't nobody in Two Dot, Montana. And she said they closed down for 3 months, or was it 3 months or 3 weeks? I was shocked. I'm like, what closed down? There was nothing there. You're the only business there.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I still remember the first year I was out here and we were in Newcastle, and they had like, here we were in going into August, and the pandemic hit in, what was it, March,
March, yeah.
and there were like no cases yet of COVID there, none at all. And it was such a weird feeling that you're in a town. These towns are so isolated that they still hadn't had any cases. What was ironic, though, is that everybody was excited that the Sturgis Road Rally was going forward, drawing 1 million bikers to the Black Hills. And I said, oh,
Yeah.
You'll have COVID then.
I remember when that happened. Sturgis still happened. And
yeah, and sure enough, they got like 1 week after Sturgis was over, Newcastle started having cases like crazy.
Didn't take long.
No, it didn't.
Our commanding staff went to a conference in Denver around Christmas of 2020, and everybody in the whole building got it. I'm like, who authorized that particular little shindig?
It's weird. That was the other thing about it. It was like, where do you draw the line with the COVID thing? It was always, they would say one thing and then people would do another thing. You would even see some of these same people that were advising masks and small groups and things like that, and then they would have big gatherings, which to me just never made any sense. Oh, I know. It's such a weird thing, but then again, in some ways, nothing has changed. It's just the disease is now normalized, but other than that, the weirdness continues.
I think a lot of what you just described, like you do one thing and do the other, is you didn't think about it when you planned stuff. Like, oh, it's just us doing it, not anybody else.
Well, and you also, there's probably some truth in that. I think sometimes too, I think some of these people just think that it wouldn't happen to them.
Yeah, it's exactly basically the same thing. Like, it ain't gonna happen here.
Right.
Like, my family never stopped doing anything. We did all our gatherings. We missed Thanksgiving in 2020, and that was it. And the rest of the time, nothing stopped. Football happened. College football happened.
Yeah, I don't think
Mm.
well, my family's pretty small, so we didn't being in Illinois, we wore masks when we are out in public, but other than that, I would
Mhm.
say that after the initial shutdown phase, nothing really changed.
Yeah. In
That life
Alabama, we
went
dared
on.
it.
Well, I've heard that in Wyoming too. I mean, they were talking, I think if I recall correctly, they were talking about social distancing measures, and the governor said something. This is Wyoming. Everybody lives like 20 miles apart
Mhm.
from each other anyway.
We worked the entire time, and people were like on the internet freaking out about, "Oh my god, I went to the store today and saw without a mask on. Don't they care about me?" I was like, "Dude, I was playing leapfrog with 3 IT technicians under a desk trying to get stuff cabled all day." I mean, no one.
Right. Well, the one thing that I will say though that to me was very disturbing about the COVID epidemic, or pandemic, I should say, is that all the contradictory information,
Mhm.
all the different ideas and so forth and so on, we are very ill prepared for a really serious pandemic, one
The real one would be
that's
horrible.
one that has a 40% mortality rate or something like that, or even something to the equivalent of SARS when that came out and had like a 12% mortality rate. We are far ill equipped for that, and we are in trouble if that ever hits.
Yeah, the 1% thing was we got lucky there.
We did.
It
I
was and
mean,
it was a very specific 1% too. Like, I don't know why that they were so standoffish to tell us the real statistics. If it was,
right.
I don't know if it was malicious or if it was trying to keep people from playing fast and loose.
Well, there's that, and there were also things like, when the pandemic first broke out, I didn't understand why, like, calls to shut down travel to China. If it was that serious, why didn't we shut travel down?
Did, didn't he
If it
try to
was,
shut it down? And it was
Trump
told he was right.
tried to shut it down, to which I will give him credit for. Um, but some of the high honchos like Fauci decided
Yeah,
not to shut down and were
they said it was
advising against
racist.
it. Yeah, there was all kinds of things, and I'm just like, no, if this is really as bad as it is, then we need to shut it down. The other thing that was disturbing about it is the idea that this thing was probably already circulating around in November or whatever,
Hmm.
long before we even knew what it was.
I
And so,
just went down a rabbit hole for that like 3 hours ago, looking up if anybody's how that happened.
what?
If it went around first, because I kind of think it did. I was just
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, and it's just like now you start seeing people be open that it was a lab leak,
mhm.
and that using the gain and function and so forth and so on, turned out to be a misstep in on the part of the scientific community, which is why they should be working with some of the diseases or trying to do some of the things that they're doing. Like, let's create a COVID variant that will be even more deadly. Why?
Yes, stop, just stop. The I got real bad sick in November or late October of 2019. And I remember waking up one day and taking a shower on high, and I felt like it was ice water on me.
Oh, I
And
believe it.
I ended up not going to work that day. I didn't think nothing about it. And then everybody started saying uh, they think they had COVID back in November, back in March when it all started, in November and October, and everybody had that flu, that bronchitis that couldn't be diagnosed with anything.
Right.
That's you've heard the stories, but I'm like, wait a minute. I remember getting like violently ill for like a day and a half, and I got my antibodies checked, and it was come up negative. So I don't know what it was, but that was in like May of 2020. So they might not even known how to do an antibodies test back then.
Oh, there's a lot of things they didn't know how to do, and like I said, there's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of things that we'll never know. Again, it just shows you the the inefficiencies of science, which I love and have spent my life doing. But the one problem with science that people have to admit that they're always hesitant to admit is that science we human beings have flaws, and that means that anything that we do will inherently be flawed, as
Hmm.
good as the science can be. And so, as long as we're flawed, there will be flaws, and that's why you have to continually work on perfecting it. you have to continually work being out in the field. You have to continually working, in the lab or whatever you're doing because it's a constantly progressing thing.
Hmm. It's pretty much science, just like pulling a thread and testing that thread every so often.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's well, a great example would be that I could think of that drove me nuts is I was once at Dinosaur National Monument. It's this famous uh,
Hmm.
dinosaur. Where all it's Morse information. It's got all these dinosaurs on the wall, and I remember one of the park rangers were saying, "Well, we don't dig on it anymore because scientists are certain that there wouldn't be anything new there." And I remember thinking to myself, "Now, how do you know that? That sounds like an arrogant statement to make, and unscientific for that matter."
Scientists are certain. How would you know?
Yeah, they're well. That's the thing is I hate the idea of scientists being certain because a scientist is a person with flaws. You have to be saying that the science is certain. Well, you can make an argument for that, but scientists are certain. Those that have flaws and human errors and whatnot, not likely.
Isn't there some kind of scandal with Dinosaur National Monument?
I am not aware, but it wouldn't
Am I
surprise me
remembering
if there
something wrong?
was. I know there was
Oh.
something that was going on that had to do with funding, and they needed a new building because a building or something was sinking or something like that. Because the actual enclosure there is a small part of a much larger monument.
Hmm. Yeah, their little area where you walk in and look at the wall. I need to go out there. I've looked at it, but and what I'm thinking of, maybe you telling me last time that exact same story. It might be where I'm thinking. Might be what my brain's
It
remembering.
may be. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to look at, and I'm not saying necessarily that they should excavate anymore because it is a piece of heritage and beauty just the way it is. But at the other hand, I will say there is no way that there is nothing in there that you don't know.
That's yeah. How would there's no unless you had some kind of ground penetrating radar, which we don't to that level.
No, and it's
Yeah.
actually, it's if I recall correctly, it's been a long time since I've been there and read about the site, but if I remember right, it's a basically a channel basin for a river that got turned up and uplifted by the I think it was the Uinta Mountains uplift, and they've only done a very small percentage of it. Now,
Hmm.
granted, it's really, really hard matrix, really hard sandstone. But like I said, just the idea of just saying that, okay, you know, nothing's there, forget it. That is the type of thing that drives me nuts.
That's big words for a park ranger too. What are you saying?
Uh, yeah. Again, there's in any science, there's battles of egos.
Oh man, egos are like the worst thing for anything like this. If
Uh,
they didn't exist, the world would be a better place. And I guess that drives people to do things at the same time.
oh, for sure.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I'm sure a lot of other people have seen it, and like I said, again, the ego brings into the narrative that the narrative is an absolute, and the narrative is there should
Mhm.
never be an absolute narrative in science.
Yeah, especially when you got something like dinosaurs that could be there could be a cavern somewhere that you find randomly that changes everything overnight. And then what are they going to do?
Oh,
Like,
there could be. It's what was that meme I saw where it had like a
yeah, the
dinosaur with a spaceship in its
a
mouth?
UFO
Yeah, UFO, and
in the
he's like,
hole.
yeah, and he's like, uh-oh.
Well, that changes everything.
That changes everything.
Yeah, it's a T Rex with a flying saucer in its mouth and a flying saucer in an archaeological dig.
I mean, I doubt that'll ever happen, but I can't say absolutely it won't.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way of knowing what. I mean, look at Ice Age Part 4, the Dawn of the Dinosaurs, with the Space Age, with the scat out there in the flying saucer. You don't know.
Oh, man, that was an awful movie. My kids watched that, and I was like, I enjoyed the original Ice Age, but that was awful.
There's That was the one where they were under the sheet of ice, wasn't it? There was like another ecosystem that never made it out.
No, I don't remember what it was, but I think it was something that yeah, Scrat was in space, and and there was a
Yeah.
meteor or something like that that was
Hmm.
supposed to hit, and I was just like, oh
And
no,
they
this is
found
too
like
much.
the magic mammals in this weird cave, this cavern. It was all rainbows.
Yeah, it is. You can tell they had run out of original
Yeah.
storylines on that one.
I wonder what I wonder what Marvel strip they recycled and put there or something. Because
Well, you never know.
the what it was the meteor was coming and hit that same spot every such and such million years because of those rocks underground where the crazy hippie mammals
Oh
were.
yeah.
And he kept holding up the diagram to the mountain, and it was just like a hole in the mountain where it came down every time, and like killed the dinosaurs, killed the it had the pictures of the one celled organisms, killed them. Now it's going to kill you, and
I
so on and so
remember
forth.
that now. Yeah. No, it does. It does sound very marvelly, doesn't it?
Hmm. It's got that same feel to it. Yeah, they
Of course. What originality is there in Hollywood anymore? So,
and now they're putting Deadpool with Wolverine. They've come full circle. It's
well, there
all
you go. Well, I mean, I know if a small child ever watches this, which I doubt he will, but I'll break your heart by saying, the last couple of Jurassic Park movies were awful. I'm sorry, they
the
were just
last four.
awful. Well, yeah, the last. Well, no, I like Jurassic World. Jurassic World was a bit of a uptick a bit.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I'll
Um,
give you that one. It felt like the first one a little bit because you were back in it.
yeah, I mean, it had a similar vibe to it of awe and wonder, and I like the idea of they genetically changed a dinosaur, and it was a fun ride. I won't say it was a great movie. It wasn't like inspiring like the first one or had
No,
any haunting mysteries or anything like that. But once you got to the second one, I remember sitting in the theater, and in the minute that Brachiosaurus was like, on the dock and it's being
yeah.
eaten by the volcano, I literally did this and just, put my head in my hand and I said, "This is so bad, I want to laugh."
Hmm. They you kind of just had to like forget what you knew beforehand to enjoy them. Like this is like a
Oh,
whole
I
nother movie.
know.
It's like a whole nother movie. This isn't my entire childhood being burned in flames right now. This is another movie franchise.
Yeah, that is basically what's happening, and they redeemed it a little bit with that. What was it, Dominion or whatever, but not
Yeah,
by much.
I gotta tell
And
you,
go
Dominion was
ahead.
good. I thought Dominion was good because the callbacks really talk to the people who grew up back then. Like the callbacks, I felt like for me, like y'all been listening to my phone conversations or something. Because the Dotson reference, I clapped like a seal and it, Dotson, Dotson here.
Well, yeah, and I can see some of that though. I guess my problem with that movie when they do that, it was nice to see these, trying to bring it full circle. That's why
Hmm.
I don't, bash the movie entirely. I won't say it's a great movie, but it was an enjoyable ride.
Hmm.
Um, it reminded me too much of basically what I call a nostalgia movie,
Hmm.
which
That's what it
basically,
was.
yeah, I mean, it was,
That's
but
what
it
it
was the
was.
same thing with Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. It's like,
Hmm.
you're just doing all these little Easter eggs in reference to movies from before, and you're just like, but that doesn't make a movie good in and of itself.
Hmm. That's all. That's all. Part three Dominion was just talking about part one a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
basically, but I mean, even
Yeah.
even the original Jurassic World. I mean, they had some Easter eggs which seemed fitting. Where he finds the old remnants of the original visitor
Yeah.
center there,
And that Jeep still had battery left
and then
somehow.
yeah, somehow had battery left. Well, they gotta have something to run away in.
What was Fallen Kingdom? That was the volcano, and that's where they had all the animals in the cages. And they had like a
Yes,
genetically modified girl.
right. And I literally remember calling that out to myself in the theater, and I'm like, yeah, she's probably like part dinosaur or something like that. And
Hmm.
okay, yeah, she's a clone. There you go.
Well,
It,
remember they
it's it
dabbled
was
in
so
that
predictable.
for like 10 years. They said the next Jurassic Park was going to be human clones.
Uh,
Yeah,
I
and they
mean,
had the pictures on the internet of like the Pachycephalosaurus dude. It's like a dude, Pachycephalosaurus head.
hey, you never know. I mean, they're coming out with another one.
What's it going to be?
I don't know. I mean, they're going to milk that one to death. It's like Star Wars. We're just going to kill it. Is what we're going to do.
I mean, what are they going to? They know it makes money every time they do it. And wouldn't you if you had something?
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to go. You got to go and see it. I mean, it's just like what is the paleo Twitter and everything is all in a excitement about this new Godzilla movie, and I'm just like, ugh. I mean,
I'm going to go
it's
see it, but paleo. I don't know why the paleo community would be upset.
because it's Godzilla, man. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that'd be about it.
I mean, and what's a shame about it is that I actually enjoyed quite a bit the original 2014 Godzilla movie. I thought that was original. It was taking it from like one guy's perspective.
I like all the monsters.
Yeah, some are better than others, and I actually really liked that King Kong where it was like in the Vietnam era.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was really well done. So those two were quite original, but when we got to Godzilla King of the Monsters or whatever, there I started cringing more.
Hydra.
Yeah, and then you got to this last one with Godzilla vs. Kong, and it's like, it's predictable. They can't actually kill Kong off or Godzilla off, so they'll unite and then they'll have a wonderful time fighting an evil monster. And that's what they did.
Did you watch the Monarch show?
I have not.
That is a good show. That is an amazing. It'll restore your faith in the whole franchise.
I'll have to check it out.
It is really. I'll put my credibility as a movie critic or whatever on the line right here, but it's an amazing show. It's got Kurt Russell.
Yeah,
too bad.
No, it can't be. No, Guardians of the Galaxy. That last one wasn't that great, and it had Kurt Russell in it.
Oh yeah, crap. Yeah, I forgot about that one. That was awful. No, he was the god, but he plays a good character on this one.
Well, that's good. I mean, I most of the time I like Kurt Russell and most of the things he's done.
And it has. Did you see Godzilla -1?
Yes, that was excellent.
That was amazing. Like it came out like it coincided with the Monarch show, and they kind of like mixed the universes a little bit in that Monarch show as well with Godzilla -1. Like there's like reveals in one that tie into the Monarch show, but like the shows aren't affiliated officially. But it has to be the same universe. It's the same monster. But the Trinity, not Trinity, but Bikini Atoll test from -1. Well, they showed the Americans watching that from a beach like 10 miles away in Monarch, and they're like rejoicing like they just landed on Mars. Like, yeah, we got him. And then it cuts to that in -1 of him growing back. Like, that's what happened. Like one begat the other.
Yeah, that would actually be for your podcast. That would be if you could find somebody that did something with the Bikini Atoll. That would be pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I'm. What I'm at now is I kind of went I niched way down to cryptids because it got a lot of views, and then I got down there. I'm like, this is weird down here. So now I'm like crawling back out a little bit. Because like I got you and we discussed fossil records and real stuff. And as much as I like rabbit holes of high strangeness, I need to see a picture and hold something eventually. I need something concrete. And so I'm just exploring I'm going like around the toilet bowl of cryptids right now. I got an anthropologist. Next week I got another biologist. He did his dissertation, our thesis on Neanderthal teeth, I think.
That's interesting.
Yeah. There's just so much stuff I'm looking for like a thread that I can find, because when I started doing the Bigfoot thing, initially I started listening for commonalities, and I started hearing some from like mostly like 60, 70-year-old men that lived on farm that claimed they had experiences. And they had a lot of common things they said, which I'm still got a mental note there because it's interesting. They said the same thing being so far apart. Then I started getting people who I guess we're trying to get a book deal. I'm still friends with them and I still listen to them because they bring a lot of audiences and their stories are interesting, but I just don't know. I don't know their shtick and why it exists. Like, why is this your story? And if it is real, why don't you do more to try to get some proof instead of just yelling at people for saying you're not telling the truth?
Well, that's an easy, I mean, that's Well, that's our whole society is we always
Yeah,
have to blame somebody instantaneously when things don't go our way. It's it's some prejudice, or it's some sort of conspiracy, or it's something like that. And one of my problems with some of these things is, you know again, as you kind of alluded to, okay, if there's a population of Bigfoots, or Nessies, or whatever, you know
Nessie,
Nessie is okay, we'll go with that.
Nessie.
Nessie, there you go. I think that's it right there. Is
Mhm.
ultimately the question comes down to, um, why isn't there any physical evidence? I mean, what about a bone,
Mhm.
or because obviously these animals have to die eventually, and even if they buried it, we would be finding graves.
That answer opens up that question opens up a whole nother section of the podcast,
Oh, I
which
know where that's
which
going. It's an interdimensional
and I
being.
freaking love that topic, but I can't hear much more of it. I mean, I love it. I adore that topic and hypothesis. Like one of my like having like a stepchild. Like I love it like he's my own. But like it's just you can only do so much with it because you can only hear so many words without seeing something.
Well, yeah, and I mean, to me, that is just getting really far fetched now. It's almost seems like, it's kind of like my son when I'm asking him what he's doing, and he like continues coming up with excuses. You
Yeah.
know, why are you doing that? Because I want to play in the sink. Why are you playing in the sink when there's knives in the sink? Because it's full of dishwater. Because it's fun, and the knives aren't dangerous, and it just goes on and on
Yeah.
and on and on.
What what I was kind of hoping would happen was when the alien thing with Congress, what have you, was coming out, there may be some kind of parallel reveal. I don't know, but they're keeping that close to their chest too.
Yeah, actually think they know that much, and I think the other problem is the government is so compartmentalized, and they
Hmm.
do that for intelligence. I've known some people that worked in intelligence before, and they'll tell you, nobody knows everything, and nor should everybody know everything, because if you get caught, you'll spill the beans.
Hmm.
And so, I think the same thing goes on with the government, and I'm very skeptical that a lot of the things that we're picking up on you know plane radars and those encounters and stuff like that
Hmm.
are actually UFOs. I mean, it's called a UFO because it's supposed to be unidentified,
Yeah.
right?
By
We're,
definition, it is a
by
UFO.
definition, by
Is it?
saying
But is it?
it's a well, if it's aliens, then it's
Yeah.
not. It's identified at that point.
UAP now. Aerial
Oh
phenomena.
yeah, you're right. I
Yeah. They
forgot that
churched
they
it up. They
changed it.
churched it up on Joe Dierte now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
Well, the man, I guess we got to wrap up soon. But the meme you were talking about earlier with the Tyrannosaurus and the
Oh
flying
yeah,
saucer.
I love that one.
Bob Lazar's thing is one of them got found in an archaeological dig.
What?
Yeah, one of the that's one of his stories is he was told one of them was found in an archaeological dig from a long time ago. One of the
What?
ships he worked on. Yeah,
Well, now he's lost even more credibility
yeah.
in
It's
my mind.
that's one of his talking points. I don't know if he said that's just what he was told from the
Uh,
sphere he was working on trying to crack.
yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, and I guess it fits well in your podcast. What would a dinosaur actually look like if, let's suppose, we found a dinosaur with a UFO? I mean, the UFO would probably be so contorted and discombobulated by geologic processes
Hmm.
that you wouldn't even know what it is.
And I would, like when the movie does something similar, like Independence Day has the ones where they had the same attacking them with the same ship that they had back in the 40s, Roswell. They had to. It came back online whenever they got near it, like Wi-Fi. It got
Right.
near its Wi-Fi, but like that was what 96, 50 years of technology. You tell me the aliens didn't upgrade technology in 50 years?
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. Yeah, I mean, again, I want some consistency in some of these stories. That is
Hmm.
my problem with so many of these things, is there's no consistency and there's no physical evidence for them. And so if you can get some physical evidence for them, I mean, I'm open to the idea that aliens are visiting this planet, but I just don't see it, especially when, there's so many unexplained physics, physical phenomenon that go on in terms of physics that I think
Hmm.
we don't know about. And also just government military aircraft. I mean, the government's now finally admitted that they've got hypersonic drones, drones that are going faster than the speed of sound. I mean, it's crazy, and if you're in the Air Force and it's actually the CIA that's doing that, you would know, because the
Yeah,
CIA would be telling the Air Force that, and they would deny it even before Congress.
I kind of think that it's that those Tic Tacs are something we have that is just on the cutting edge of technology.
Oh, I think
Yeah,
a lot of the
yeah,
things that we're seeing, they're well advanced than we think they are.
and it's almost whenever they had the Roswell thing, like the whole, I guess the smoke screen, what they're telling us, which I guess we're led to have to believe it, is that it was they told us aliens existed so we wouldn't further investigate what they were coming up with because of the Cold War going on. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's an excellent book, and I can't think of who wrote it, and I may have mentioned it before, but she did an interview of all these different people that worked at Area 51, and
Hmm.
I remember very distinctly that one of them said that they had a bunch of like fake UFOs and stuff like that, and every time they time it, because they knew the Russian satellite was coming over, and so they'd run out there with all their fake UFOs and stuff, put the real aircraft away, and so when the Russians would photograph, all they would see is the UFOs and everything, and they
every
would
90
keep stuff
minutes.
like that every 90 minutes or whatever it was. They would just keep doing that.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's the government. The government's dangerous enough on its own.
Oh, agreed.
I was kind of hoping something would come out of them, but you never know.
Trust me,
Or it could,
living out west here and living in the middle of federal land, you feel the all the different things that the feds do all the time.
it just reminded me that I'm actually trying to get some forest rangers on. I need to check on those emails. That just reminded me when you said that. All right,
I
man.
Yeah.
It's getting late for me, and my coffee is wearing off. I did a really quick concentrated shot when I made my cup real quick, and it's starting to wear off quick. Like starting to
I more than understand.
because we had a fish fry today, and I was sleepy. I was like, man, I am just stuffed. I didn't eat that much.
Yeah.
I love fish fries though.
Oh, I do too.
Especially during Lent.
Lint.
You know, you go to church. I always work the church French fish fry during Lent, and just consume my weight
Yeah,
in it.
I no, I do. I was at church today, and but they I think they had a fish fry a couple of weeks ago. They
What
don't.
do they fry in Wyoming churches?
I think it's just the same thing. A lot of it's cod is what they usually do. It seems like cod and
Mm.
stuff. But a lot of the restaurants out here, and I'm not sure why. I thought it was more an Eastern fish. Still trying to figure it out. Is walleye. There's a
Hmm.
lot of walleye out here for whatever reason, and trout. But trout makes sense.
Ours are all catfish. We have them local, but it's kind of a fish that can catch locally.
Right.
I heard what are we still talking? But I heard the Easter, the invasive. You be talking about fish. All of a sudden, it's another hour goes by. What happened? I don't know. Then we're on hot sauces. Then it's just taco trucks, and that's how it happens. But like I heard the snakehead, the invasive fish, was really good,
You know what? You're not the first person that's told me that, and I
and I
was
don't know
hearing
where you
that.
find one.
I think that they've got them in Florida, but then
Well, of
again,
course they do.
everything's yeah. I mean, everything's in Florida.
You could have just brought that out of your ass just now. We don't. I think it's in Florida. Everything's in Florida.
Everything's in Florida.
They have wild monkeys in Florida, for God's sake.
I'm waiting for the lion, the African lion, to be an invasive species in Florida.
That's Texas.
Oh, is it
So
Texas? Okay.
they got it. Anyway, yeah, yeah. Texas has farms, counties dedicated to African deer-like creatures that's just run wild.
Oh,
like
like gazelles or something?
the nail guy and the muckjacks and stuff like that.
Huh.
And yeah, and these giant 30,000 acre high fences where people hunt these exotic animals.
I did not know that. I mean, I knew
Yeah.
about ostrich farms and stuff down there, but that is, I mean, I guess Texas is pretty close to the African savanna.
Yeah, I mean, latitudinally, not too far.
Huh?
Still got the goat heads in the ground. I mean, those things that the dried up flour that's like
Yeah.
giant burrs. I
Yeah, I
guarantee
want to go
Africa's
hunt.
got something like that.
If I'm going to Texas, I'm hunting a chupacabra. So
Yeah, or pigs from a helicopter, either one.
I still want the chupacabra.
All right, man. We'll wrap it up here. It's been a great chat. I needed it.
All right.
I was hoping you weren't going to cancel, but I would have understood if you would have, because
Oh,
I needed a W on the board.
I'm more than happy to anytime.
But where can we find you, your website and whatnot?
So our website is Paleo Prospectors. That's one word. So www.paleoprospectors.com. You can also find us on Facebook, and we do tours. You can basically keep what you find, minus like a dinosaur or something new to science. But any isolated bones you can keep. We still have a couple weeks open. So and we do day digs now that I'm out here. So that would be the website and the info.
All right. I keep confusing. I keep thinking you or Denver Fowler, but I can't remember which one has the Paleo Prospectors.
Yes,
I'm
the one.
The one that I talk to the most is Paleo Prospectors. I don't talk to him that often anymore.
Gotcha.
But I will. All right, folks. We'll wrap it up. I'm going to play my theme music and see you next week.
I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it. I didn't believe in it. I never given it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.